everybody, thank you so much for tuning into my YouTube channel, #MovieBae. I am MovieBae, and in this video, we're going to be talking about all of America's social issues packed into 90 minutes. Let's go.
No probable cause exists to file any charges against Officer Randall.
This is my son. This is my little boy. You took that from me. The world took that from me. This is your jury. The deciders of your fate. Today, you will be tried for the murder of my son.
American Skin is Nate Parker's directorial debut about a war veteran's seek for justice after his son was shot unjustly by a police officer. So this movie begins as a documentary style. He talked about how Kajani, his son, was just started at a new school in a better neighborhood with white kids. Kajani was a young man. He was 14 years old, and you could tell by cell phone footage and Lincoln's flashbacks that his son was very woke. I hate that word, but his son was very woke, especially for his age. You could just see the confusion, especially with the young man growing up during the Black Lives Matter movement, because this is a real-time movie. You could just see the conflict between Kajani of how it should be and how it is. So after the grand jury decides not to press charges against Officer Mike, the officer who was responsible for shooting KJ, obviously the town is at an uproar. The family, understandably, is distraught. It was a great scene by Nate Parker that happened after the verdict was handed down. It was a reaction that I hadn't seen before in a movie to something like that, and I was like, I understood, like overstood. So like I said, this movie starts off as a documentary POV style, which was honestly one of my cons about the movie. At the beginning, it started that way, but then through the end half of the movie, it switches into a traditional theatrical view. I did have a con about that because if you're gonna start with a POV, they were doing body cams, security cams, and documentary style footage, that type of film style needed to be carried through the entire movie. After the verdict, he decides to take matters into his own hands. He has a couple of his friends, family members, people that he served with in the army, and they stormed the police station where that police officer works and took over. They took the police officers and everyone who was in the building basically as hostage, and they held their own mock trial with a mock jury. And whatever the jury decided, if Officer Mike would be held responsible or not, then Link was going to deliver the verdict, whatever that was going to be. So during the police station, this is where I feel like a majority of the issues with the film came into play. There's really just one issue. Writing-wise, screenwriting-wise, the dialogue was very on the nose. And that means where it's less show and more tell. At the beginning of the film, it was a lot of show, don't tell. And if he just would have kept along with that, I feel like it just would have hit so much harder, especially when it comes to social issues. You really don't want to hit people over the head with what exactly is the issue. I feel like that was his point when making this movie, and if that's what he wanted to do, he executed it very well. The only problem is when it comes to critics, that's not going to go over well with them, if that makes sense. While they're doing the mock trial, the mock jury, Lincoln decides to let the jury discuss, like they can answer and ask questions as they feel. It's an open dialogue. It's an open forum. It kind of went from a trial about Kajani to all the social issues that's going on in America. Yes, it's a social issue. Yes, it's going on, and in a way it loosely relates, But I felt like the more that they let the dialogue between the jury and the cops go on, the further and further it was getting away from the point of the trial. So that part of the video is going to be my spoiler-free review. If I was a Rotten Tomato, I would give this movie a nice, solid. It is a great movie. I was happy, I was sad, I was angry, I was disgusted, I was disturbed. Like every emotion that a good movie should make you feel like, I felt it during this film. The reason why I gave this film is because of the heavy on the nose dialogue as well as the film work. It was, like I said, it started off POV documentary style and then it went to theatrical. And that's just like, and for this to be his first film, I feel like Spike Lee, because he produced it, that's something Spike Lee could have easily been like, hey, if we don't start it this way, that's how you need to carry it out throughout the entire movie. But he didn't do that, so they just dropped the ball on that one. This next portion of this video will be spoilers. So if you don't want the movie spoiled, I advise you to not spoil the end of the movie. So go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe, and then watch the movie, come back, and start at this marker right here, okay? A good part about having the jury and the audience and the police in an open forum dialogue was I feel like it did eventually get the police officers so riled up to the point where they actually confessed to racially profiling Lincoln and Kajani while they were driving. If that's what Nate Parker wanted that dialogue to do, to get to that end result of an overflow of emotions and it ended up being like, yes, we did racially profile him, then understood that's how he decided to get that character there. One of the issues that I had screenwriting wise is I felt like they forgot about the other officer. There was 2 officers on that traffic stop. The one who was driving, and I felt like, just as a viewer, I felt like that officer has seniority over Officer Mike, who was the one responsible for shooting Kajani. And I felt like they didn't focus enough on that officer, like, at all. So another thing is, when I say a movie is dialogue heavy or the dialogue was very on the nose, I can literally count how many people I can have an intelligent conversation with about these issues. It did seem very point heavy, like things that you will see on the internet that people say. It was like, okay, we're going to take this point, this point, this point, this point, this point, and then we're going to assign it to these individual characters. So it was kind of like all the black people thought the same, all the women thought the same, all the Hispanics thought the same, all the cops thought the same. Not all the Hispanics, all the cops thought the same. And that kind of lacked for character development. The only time where you could really see different characters with actual different point of views is during the jury deliberation, and it was with the young man who was making the documentary, Jordan King, because even though he was a young black man, he was like, I grew up middle class, you know, I have police officers in my family, and even though I haven't directly dealt with these issues, I know it's an issue. I wish more characters would have been fleshed out a little bit like that. Make it a little more controversial, because the masses agreed with each other. And for a movie that's talking about social issues, and who wants to start the conversation and not be so, this movie is about black people and how black people feel. They also talked about police officers and how they feel and how they're trained. And I learned some things about police protocol that I didn't know about. So he definitely tries to bring in both sides, but I do feel like it was too heavily on this side. It could have been chopped up a little bit more, if that makes sense. Because all black people don't think the same, and we all don't have the same point of view, and we all don't have the same opinion. So I feel like that would have made it a little more controversial and a little more real, and I live for controversy. I live for it. Now, this part, how the movie ends, is my favorite part and my least favorite part all together. It's my least favorite part because we've seen negotiating type movies before, like with John Q. It was more so like the healthcare issue. That's what John Q was about. It was about the healthcare issue. In John Q, he stood his day in court. Not a happy ending, but a happy ending, right? So I kind of just thought that this movie that Lincoln was going to have his day in court. I really did. And when he was shot with his hands up, surrendering with no casualties from no hostages, I was very upset. I was like, that's not fair. That's not fair. I didn't want that to happen. I wanted him to see his day in court. But the justice system isn't fair. When it happened, especially how it happened, because the security camera caught him with his hands up. He deliberately looked in that security camera like, I am unarmed. And he was shot, and it was shown on that security camera. It's like a full circle because his son was shot unarmed. He was then shot unarmed and surrendering. Like, it was like nothing changed. The progress that we made in here within our little circle with the police officers, with the jurors, with the citizens, it really didn't mean shit because when you go out to the real world, the same shit happens. And then, this is my most favorite part, is the news reports after Lincoln's murder, assassination. Different news stations had different narratives of what had happened. One station was talking about how the grand jury decided not to press charges against Officer Mike, and Lincoln decided to take justice into his own hands. The next news station was talking about how he had Israeli connections and this was a terrorist attack. Right. And then after they just talked about how this man whose son was killed unjustly, his 14-year-old son was killed unjustly, and now he had been murdered, they go to sports. Back to you, John, with sports. And then they talk about a 6'5", 222-pound black man who's an NBA prospect, how he's a beast on the court, how he's a monster. And I majored in mass communication, so I'm not talking out of my ass when I say this. These are adjectives that they use for black men, especially in the media, that help perpetuate that negative stereotype, that help perpetuate that black men are monstrous, they're aggressive, they big, they're a threat. I love that they put that part into the movie because that's the conversation. That's what I wish the whole movie was like, that it was subtle but not missed. It wasn't on the nose. If you got it, you got it. And this is the conversation that needs to be had. So that was my favorite part of the entire movie. Needless to say, if you haven't seen it, I suggest you go see it. It's definitely a conversation starter. Nate Parker wanted to start a conversation. This is the movie to do so. Could it have been a short film? Absolutely. I definitely think it could have been a 30-minute short film. But it executed in what he wanted to do. So I advise that everybody go see it. I love the movie. Would I watch it again? No, because it was too many emotions for me. I normally don't even watch movies like that. But I had to. Thank y'all again for tuning in. Be sure you like, comment, and subscribe for more content just like this. And I'll see you next time. It's a date.